He's an acclaimed dramatic actor. You may have seen his work in Game of Thrones and Lost and Fargo, and he's dabbled in the comedy realm a little bit as well. He's dipped his toes in those waters. On a little show called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You may have heard of that.
That was just a one and done, right?
Yeah, it never made it past season one. He now is he's hoping his next show is gonna hit, since the first one was such a dud out of the box, that he's hoping this one on Apple TV Plus comes out this Friday, the entire first season. It's actually really, really freaking funny. Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet. Rob McElhenney is in here with us. What's going on, my man?
Hello.
How you living?
I'm living pretty well. I'm loving New York City. I'm so happy to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, especially talking about the show, which is really interesting because it's I always say to Jessica, it's so hilarious. We do an entertainment show and all we talk about is movies and TV and some music and Broadway occasionally, books once a month maybe. We never talk about video games, yet the video game industry is the biggest entertainment industry in the world. What made you decide to want to sort of take a peek inside this?
Yeah, it was actually brought to us by Ubisoft. So Ubisoft is one of the biggest gaming studios in the world, and they approached me because they were fans of Sunny and said, we want to do something in the gaming industry. And honestly, I said, no, thank you. I really had no interest. And only because I'd seen over the years the way that the gaming industry has been depicted, and it always seemed like came from such a negative place, and it was always sort of like derided and just marginalized, and we just didn't want to do anything like that. And then I went to one of these dev studios and started talking to some of the people, and actually, to your point, I learned a stat that absolutely blew me away, and this is true, and you can look it up right now if you don't believe me. Grand Theft Auto. Have you heard of Grand Theft Auto?
Yeah.
Okay, it's one of those titles you've heard of. Like, my mother's heard of Grand Theft Auto. She's never played Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto, as a series, has made more money than the entire Star Wars franchise, including merchandise.
Shut up.
That is the truth. Yet, everybody knows who George Lucas is. Everybody knows who Steven Spielberg is. Who created Grand Theft Auto?
You?
Iron Grim? Iron Grim?
By the way, I wish it was me. I do not know the answer to that question. I don't know anybody who worked on Grand Theft Auto. So when we were talking, Charlie and I, and Megan Gans, our co-creator and executive producer, we were talking about it. We were like, wow, that's a really fascinating dichotomy. Like, you have this massive global enterprise and industry, and yet you don't know who any of these people are. And I know for a fact it drives them insane. Because the people that create these games are like, well, wait, why am I not George Lucas? I should be George Lucas. I should be treated like Steven Spielberg, and yet they're not.
So what's it like? You said you went to development play. Like, what are those? Just describe that to me. What are those offices like?
Fascinating, fascinating. Because you have all of these people from all different backgrounds, different cultures, different countries. This was in Montreal, the one that I went to. So you had people from the States, people from Canada. It's actually a French company, so people from France and really all over the world. And they were all united by their love of games. But each person has a different job and a different area of expertise. So you'll have like art direction, or you'll have the writers, or you'll have the creative director who's sort of like the overall visionary of the game. And then you have the devs that actually make the games, the programmers. And so you have all of these people who are, because they're billion-dollar enterprises, they're at the top of their game. They are the best of the best in the world. And so they are united by their love of games, and that's about it. Otherwise, they're constantly fighting with each other and clashing with each other because they believe that their area of expertise is the most important. And so we thought, wow, couple that with the fact that it is also a workplace environment. So you have HR, and you have the janitorial staff, and you have the people that work in the cafeteria, and you have the security teams, and you realize, like, wow, this is just a rich tapestry through which we can tell these like really big funny stories.
And especially because I feel like every office place has been tackled already. This is, it's nice to see something new.
It is interesting too to watch the different departments, like you said, in your character of Ian, not Ian, Grim, and it's sort of like, tell me about the creative director and how you created this guy, because like, he's super egotistical, kind of cool, but also kind of douchey. Like, I mean, just sort of, where did you come up with this character and like the way he sort of just views himself as this messiah almost?
So one of the first people I met up there, it was this gentleman He had this long beard, and he was wearing all these rings and necklaces, and he had this long ponytail, this sort of man bun. And then he was
Steven Seagal?
and he was walking with a cane. Well, he was walking with a cane, right? But he was probably 35 years old. And I realized he was walking with a cane not because he had a limp or anything like that, but this was like an accoutrement. Like this was something this was his look. And he had this sort of long black leather duster on, which I know a little bit about from Sonny. And I was like, wow, this guy's a character. And so I said, oh, hey man, what do you do? And he said, I'm a creative director. And I said, oh, I don't know anything about the gaming industry. What does a creative director do? And he sort of like took a moment and like really took a moment and like looked out into the distance of fluorescent lights and was like, brother, I build worlds.
That's so great.
And I was like, oh, could you excuse me one second? And I went outside and I called Charlie and I was like, we got to do a game about these people. We got to do a show about these people because they are incredible. And then just to have that level of outsized narcissism and ego is such a fascinating character, right? But then beyond that, he's not wrong. Like they are building virtual worlds where millions of people all over the world are communing and playing together. And there are so many levels of detail that need to go into that experience. And so he is a builder of worlds, and yet nobody wants to walk around and call themselves that, but this guy does.
Did you have to prove your skill or your knowledge of gaming or of the industry at all when you went there and when you signed on to do this?
No, actually, I wanted to be as honest as possible, because if there is an industry that can smell a pander a mile away or a lie, it is the gaming industry, and you do not want to be on the wrong side of that vitriol. So I went in and I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know that much about the world, but if I'm going to do a show about it, I'm going to get it right. So I want to spend as much time as I can talking to the right people. So that's what we did. We sat. I sat for 2 days and just talked to as many people as I could to get a good sense of what it was like to actually not only play games. Of course, I play games, but I don't build them. But then what it's like to work in one of these studios. Then once we got the pickup, our writers' room, I comprised it of hardcore gamers or hardcore devs or executives who've worked in the industry, and then the other half of the bifurcation was people who have never played a video game in their life, right? So we could make a show that anybody could watch, right? And one of the things that I've been hearing, because people are now starting to see it, which is like the biggest compliment, is that people will come up and say, I don't care about video games at all, and yet I love the show. And then on the other side of that is people saying, I love games. I thought you were going to screw this up. It really made me nervous, and I really love the show.
What I love about the show is that you take a look at things happening and address certain aspects, but then in a subversive way. Like, for instance, there's an episode where you talk about, the video game industry seemed a little bit of a boys' club, a bro-down, throwdown, if you will. And all of a sudden there's some young girl coders that come in to meet the women that work there to be inspired, and that ends up being a little bit of an issue, as you expect when they then talk to the women. It just doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. And I love the way you sort of turn some of those things on its head. Yes,
well, look, just like there are in most industries right now, everybody's really taking a look at what the culture is within these corporations, right? And is this really just a male monolith culture? Well, no doubt, right? So the gaming industry is certainly guilty of that. And what they have been doing over the last 5 or 6 years is really try to change that. But that's not something that's going to change overnight. And they're doing what we're also doing in the entertainment business that I see, which is a lot of self-congratulation. Yeah. Hey, look at how great we are. And by the way, we're all wondering, like, it's so funny to me when like my friends in Hollywood are like, why do Americans hate us? I'm like, I can list about 15 different things. But one of them is all this self-congratulation is ridiculous, right? Like all of a sudden, all of this behavior that was tolerated for so long, and now all of a sudden it's being exercised, and now we're all celebrating, right? Like, look at us now. Like, now you should all do it too. And like, people just don't want to be preached to, especially by people who were literally enabling a lot of this behavior, right? So what we found in the gaming industry is a lot of similarities, where even though a lot of the studios, the hearts are in the right place, there's also still a lot of like, hey, woman, we're giving out awards for Developer of the Year, and all of a sudden last year it was a dude that won. The year before that it was a dude. The year before that it's a dude, going back to 1975. Well, now this year there's actually 5 winners. Wait, last year there was only 1. Well, now it's 5, and they're all women. Oh, why? Well, we're trying to catch up. Okay. Okay. And then they don't realize that that's a pander, right? Like that's not actually doing anything positive. What you're trying to do is brag about how you're changing something as opposed to really changing it.
It's window dressing.
No, and of course there are people that really are, and the culture is changing, but that's not that's not sexy.
Right,
That's not the thing you're gonna see on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
And it's also that part's not as funny. The part that's funny is the self-congratulation and exposing that.
It's amazing.
I also love like the fact that you're the video game industry is in this industry. It's probably the funniest thing on the show, and the way you guys have to cater to like 10-year-old influencers. And there's this one character with Pootie Shoes, or I can't remember.
Pootie Shoe, yeah.
Yeah, Pootie Shoe. And it's literally the most obnoxious jerk face preteen, and the amount of power he wields over your company is extraordinary.
That's a real thing. Yeah, that's a real thing. I mean, the influencers are very young people, and look, the thing is that we play it for comedy, which is great, and it works because the kid's such a great actor, and really, we have this multi-million-dollar expansion of a billion-dollar industry or a billion-dollar game, and it's all resting on the reviews of this 14-year-old kid, right? Because he has 30 million people that watch him, and that's a real thing. And for as funny as it is, I think the reason that he resonates so much and people really love that character is that not only is it true, but I actually think it's a positive thing. It's like finally democratizing an experience that we've certainly had in the entertainment industry, where we used to just put stuff out and then it's like it, that's it, or don't like it, we don't care, but we're forcing it upon you. But now we have direct feedback from the fans. And so some people think of that as something negative and terrifying because, like, well, they shouldn't get to say what we're making. Well, the truth of the matter is they still don't get to say what it is that we're doing. We're taking in the information and then doing with it what we would normally do. That's just what collaboration is. I do that with my writing staff. I do that with the other actors. I do that with the crew, right? It's just that now instead of 12 ideas, you have 22,000 ideas. But still, my job is to listen to the community, hear what it is, and then make what I want to make. It doesn't mean I'm always going to agree with what they say. I'm not always going to do. I learned this with Sunny. I'm not going to change Sunny because I hear people didn't like something. But if 45,000 people say, hey, we don't understand this, it's probably confusing. So maybe you should change it. And I feel like when I see like people like Pootie Shoe, it actually is empowering, right, to a younger generation who are saying, hey, we feel ownership over this game. We love this game so much. And these are our feelings about it.
Are we getting another season of Sunny? What's going on? Season 15. Tell me something.
We'll see. We are in active negotiations. Our feeling is we'll do it forever. We want to do it forever. I mean, you know, our criteria by which we continue to return is very simple. It's like three boxes we need to check. Are we still having fun? Are we still doing something innovative and new from time to time? And is the audience still there? And each year, the audience grows. I mean, which is crazy. In 14 years, the audience still continues to grow. And we still have a blast, and we still get to do innovative and different things.
Isn't this like the longest running live action comedy like ever?
Yes. So we are tied right now for the longest running live action sitcom of all time with Ozzie and Harriet.
Damn them!
Damn them. And we passed My Three Sons the year before. So season 15 will break the record.
So I guess that was a pretty good, like, what, $200 investment you made when you shot that pilot?
Yeah, it turned out
that turned out okay?
What's it like being in, I mean, is there a thrill of starting another room and, you know, when you've been writing for the same characters and you've been doing that, was there something like especially exciting about, yes, I'm going to do new people?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. You just get to stretch and do things in ways. I mean, what we strive to do in Sunny is to still continue to do different things, and I try to take opportunities to, you know, do massive body transformations or learn how to dance or whatever it might be. It's just something, because otherwise then we would get bored if we couldn't stretch. But you're still limited by the fact that there is a paradigm that we've created over the years, and if we don't honor that, then we are doing a disservice to the fans who do want to see Sunny. And I think one of the things about Sunny is that we're always stretching and doing things differently, but it's still, you know, the same story of these 5 narcissistic maniacs. And so if we deviate too far away from that, that's not Sunny. So this was now an opportunity to do something completely different.
Narcissistic maniac gamers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the major difference is we were like, well, if we're going to do something that's the opposite of Sunny, right? And Sunny, by the way, when I set out to create Sunny, I wanted to do the opposite of one of my favorite shows, which is Friends. I loved Friends, but I wanted to do.
Yeah, cut his mic.
You
cut
just
his mic.
lost us.
Cut his mic.
Absolutely
You
not. Keep
just
going. You didn't lose
lost
anybody.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
right here.
Our least favorite show.
Their
Yeah,
least
that's
favorite,
because
not
you're stupid.
Yeah, well, there's that.
Look, when I was in high school, there were. I mean, Seinfeld. Seinfeld is my favorite show of all time.
Now we're talking. Put his mic back on. Yeah,
Yep,
put that on.
volume. Yep.
Seinfeld is my favorite show of all time. And I think you can see that in the DNA of everything I've ever done, but certainly is Sunny. I mean, it's a direct ripoff of Larry, and I've told him as such, and he's like, "Yeah, I know." But Friends was one of my other, and which is why Thursday nights was the best. I got two of my favorite shows. Again, you're stupid for not liking it because that show is amazing.
New Caroline in the City.
The Single Guy and Caroline in the City didn't quite make it. But I wanted to do the opposite of that. So that theme song is "I'll Be There for You." And when we created Sunny, I was like, what if there was a show where it was the opposite, where there were friends who would never be there for one another, regardless of what was going on in their lives? That would be the opposite, and that is essentially what Sunny became. So then, when we were talking about Mythic Quest, we were like, okay, well, we want to do something different. How do we do that? Well, the best shows of all time are people who are stuck together, whether they're family or whether it's a workplace comedy. They're stuck together because they need each other, whether it's because their job or because they're related or whatever it is. And in Sunny, they're stuck together because no one else will be friends with them, and because of their own abject poverty and failure, they have nowhere else to go. Mythic Quest is the opposite because they're stuck together by their extreme success, and they have these handcuffs to have created the biggest video game in the world, and if they leave, then they're leaving this massive success. But they absolutely hate the people that they work with. And I don't know how to do a show where the people don't hate each other.
It just comes naturally.
It just comes naturally.
You mentioned massive body transformations. You gained, 60 pounds for season 7 around there?
Yes.
What was harder, gaining that weight or losing that weight?
I would say gaining the weight.
Poor baby.
Yeah.
Is it hard to gain weight?
Okay, it's not hard to gain 20 pounds. It's not that hard to gain 40 pounds if you did it over the course of a year, but I gained 60 pounds in about 3.5 months or 4 months. And that was, again, I'm not complaining. Believe me. We started this talking about roofing, and I've been up on a roof before. That's hard work. I make carpentry, hardwood floors. That's hard work. Gaining weight for a role on a TV show is not hard work. However, I was drinking a gallon of ice cream every single day because that was the only way to actually put on the calories.
What flavor?
Okay, thank you for asking. You know, you're the first person that's ever asked that.
I do the real journalism here.
Mint chocolate chip.
Yes, right?
That's his favorite
That's
flavor.
my
Mint-
jam.
Okay, but can I tell you what I never, ever want to eat for the rest of my life?
Mint chocolate.
Mint chocolate chip.
Yeah.
It disgusts me when I think about
ruined
it.
it,
It
yeah.
disgusts me because I drank so much of it. I couldn't even eat it because you can't eat that many calories a day in solid food.
Now, did you want the other guys to gain weight too, and they were like, no sale?
That's exactly what it
like,
was.
no way.
I mean, again, going back to Friends, and we're doing the opposite of Friends, which, by the way, okay, there you go. If you hate Friends so much, I'm talking about doing the opposite.
Yes,
I
this-
know,
that's
that's
why
why
we
I
like
love it.
Sunny.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
good. I was noticing, I was going back and watching old reruns because it's one of the greatest shows of all time. Thank you.
Were you like, oh, please let it be one with Marcel, the monkey?
And oh, come on, I love Marcel. I met Marcel, but we'll get into that later. So I noticed that they were getting better looking as the years were going by, and because they were famous and they had chefs and money and I thought, well, that's not indicative of real life, especially if you treated yourself the way that the characters on Sunny treat themselves with their diet and alcohol abuse. So I went to the cast and I said, I think, guys, we should all gain 50 pounds next season and not say anything about it. It'll just be the weirdest season where we just all look like awful. And everybody was like, no, we're not going to do that. Except Danny, who was like, yeah, I'll do that. And we were like, no, you're the one person we do not want to do this because you might die of a heart attack here. So eventually I was like, well, I'm going to do it. And they said, okay, fine. And I packed it on, and I packed it on fast.
It was so great. It was just I remember when I first got those press materials sent to EW, I was like, wow! Like, it's like,
What just happened?
What
Yes.
happened?
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right, tell us the Marcel story. We're not letting you out without that.
Well, there's only a few. Like you see a lot of. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but you're watching TV movies. You see a lot of animals that work a lot, and they kind of look similar, and you realize it's actually the same animals because they are the best trained. And there are a few that like are almost like human. You look into their eyes, you realize how smart they are, and Marcel was one of them. He was one of those monkeys that I don't remember what his real name was. I do not think it was Marcel, but he was just like, I mean, you look into his eyes and you're like, oh, this might be a human being trapped in a monkey's body.
How did you meet him?
On set. It was on,
Right.
on stage. I get to meet a lot of famous people.
Wow, and monkeys and primates.
And primates.
Yeah.
I meet all the famous animals in Hollywood.
So Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet. The second part of the title is after the update of the campaign you guys are launching. Does that mean could every season of this show be like a new campaign or update?
You're on to something.
Look at that.
Yes. Not many people have picked up on that. What they've picked up on mostly is that it is one of the dumbest titles in the history of TV. And I point out, no, it's not. The dumbest title in the history of TV is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, because that's more syllables and you can't fit it on a poster. And that worked out. So that's why we went with this.
There's no hashtag that works for it.
Exactly. Well, so then people just wound up calling it Sunny.
Yeah.
And so we figured the show is actually called Mythic Quest, and the first season will be Raven's Banquet. Next season it'll be the next expansion, the next expansion, the next expansion. But we just thought it was just a happy accident that it was as ridiculous as Sunny.
Did the FX people try and get you to change that title when you first started with them? It's Always Sunny or not?
No. In fact, the original title was It's Always Sunny on TV. And then we thought which was based on an Aha song, actually.
The sun always shines on
always
TV.
shines on
Yeah.
TV.
Touch me.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
Cut
we
her
thought
mic now.
that might be a little too niche. Of course, apparently
No.
it's not. But yeah, so that we changed it and then we thought, well, that's just sort of a working title. So we had a contest in the office, like, can anybody rename the show? And we were really close with one title that one of the PAs came up with, which was Jerks. Just plain old Jerks. And I think, like, looking back on it, I'm like, that actually is a better title. But this one seemed to stick and it worked.
You're like,
so.
I don't do one-word titles.
No,
so,
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, longest running sitcom in history. I think it worked out all right. Rob McElhenney, thank you so much for coming in. Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet. It's out the entire season on Friday on Apple TV+. It's tons of fun. Love it, man.
Thank you.